rushing along in unison, coming together. These diverse personalities, all with their own opinions. I mean, if we were to throw everybody in here and say, all right, you write down on the piece of paper how this thing ought to work and run. Do you know that as many people are in here, we'd have that many different ideas as to how it ought to go, right? And so you have 120 in here with no established leadership, moving along in perfect unison, getting the thing done in perfect harmony. And I'm just saying that I don't think it was because they sat down and had a powwow and said, we got to be unified. No, instead I think it was because all of them individually were yielded to the Lord. And when all of them individually were yielded to the Lord, all of them collectively were unified in the Lord because they were all operating according to one mind, and it wasn't theirs. Does that make sense? They were unified in Jesus because they were all individually yielded to Jesus. Those, again, that we find in Jerusalem were there because each one individually chose to obey Christ and go to Jerusalem. Those that we find waiting in the upper room, the 120, were there because each one individually chose to obey Christ and wait in Jerusalem. And those that we find praying, each one of them independently chose to manifest an attitude of dependence and prayer upon the Lord. And because all of them were individually yielded to Jesus, all of them, according to the description here in the book of Acts, the Word of God, were unified in Jesus. You think about a pianist. I could probably creep people out that are playing the piano because I love to watch. It's incredible to me. You think about what takes place when somebody's playing the piano. It's really awesome. Okay? Their hands, I'm so uncoordinated. I could never do this. Okay, so you got hands here, and all their fingers, they're all doing something different. Okay? Not only are the hands moving different, but they're each individual finger doing something different. And then you got the foot doing its own thing down here. Okay? And the eyes, while the foot's doing whatever it's doing down here, and the fingers are doing whatever they're doing right here, the eyes are reading music. And figuring out what okay, you see what I'm saying? What the hands and the feet are supposed to do. And so here it is. All of this is going on at once, and yet what's coming out of the piano is one beautiful sound being produced by all of those members working independently of one another. You see what I'm saying? They're all doing their own thing, and yet producing one sound. Do you know why they're able to do that? Because they're all operating according to one mind. One mind is controlling each one of those fingers. One mind is controlling that foot. One mind is controlling those eyes. And so, because all of them are subservient to one mind, then all of them are working together individually in unison. Isn't that funny? Isn't that neat the way it works? And that's exactly what's being described here in the book of Acts. You have 120 different people, 120 diverse personalities, 120 individuals, all with their own ideas. And probably many of them good, and many of them would have worked. But 120 different people, and yet we find them with no official leadership working together in perfect harmony. And it's because all of them are individually operating according to one mind, and that's the mind of the Lord. They were all unified in Jesus because all of them individually were yielded to Jesus. The same principle applies even today. Jesus is still the head of the local New Testament church. God is still not the author of confusion. And if members individually are in submission to the head, then unity collectively is the only possible result. Isn't that neat? That's the truth. If my walk with the Lord is where it's supposed to be, and my heart attitude before the Lord is an attitude of dependence and submission and humility, if I've got that right, and Mrs. Ravenscraft here has got that right, and Miss Anita back here has that right. You know, and if all of us individually are personally concerned about our own heart attitude towards the Lord, and we are doing our dead level best to make sure that our attitude of heart is right before the Lord, if all of us are on that boat individually, then this thing will go far, and it'll go in unison and in unity. It'll just happen. We won't have to have banners up everywhere that are promoting unity, and we don't have to have stuff saying, let's all get together and all that. We don't have to do any of that if all of us individually will simply determine to be dependent upon the Lord. And what does that look like? Well, it's something like this. How often do you find yourself consulting the Word of God to deal or to help you navigate the issues of life? How do you make those decisions? How do you get direction there? Are you the type of person? I'm bad about this. I'm bad about taking situations into my own hands. I'm a problem solver. I'm a fixer. I don't like letting things go undone. Matter of fact, again, just come and watch me set up one morning. I'm all over the place because I want my hands in something because I just want to make sure it all happens right. My weakness is waiting on the Lord. My weakness is looking to the Lord. My weakness is instead of just figuring the thing out, saying, God, because the fact is, it could be the Lord wanted the sound system to mess up this morning just to humble me. It could be that I spread the blankets all over the street. It wasn't like one fell out in the driveway. One fell out way over here. Two fell out way over here on the corner. Two more fell out over here. I lost a hook over here. So I get out of the truck and I'm like, oh, I dropped the hook. I'd already shut the trailer door. I'm like, oh, I dropped the hook. So I get out there and Dustin here was getting out of the car and he's like, you need some help? I'm like, oh, no, I got it. I get the hook and I look up and there's 2 blankets. I was like, oh, well, I guess I got to go get those. I walk over there. By the time I get to those blankets, I'm like, oh, well, there's another blanket on the corner over there. So I've got blankets everywhere. By the time I get back to the door, I probably look like a walking blanket with some hooks hanging off of me. It looked ridiculous. And maybe it's just the Lord saying, listen, it's not about you. This is my word. And maybe instead of just trying to fix the thing, I just need to humble myself and look to the Lord and let Him do what He's going to do. If we're all individually, if we all determine to have that kind of a dependent attitude and spirit that just says, Lord, it's all about you. And that, listen, that has to do with the way we approach life, trying to let the Word of God be the foundation for our choices and decisions. That goes into that, to our prayer life, having an attitude that says every day, we approach every day with prayer. There are folks in here dealing with particular issues and things of that nature. Having this attitude that just acknowledges that we are dependent upon the Lord, that'll drive us before the Lord in prayer. It absolutely will. And it ought to. And so if that's the attitude of each individual, Lord, it's all about you. I depend upon you. Peter and them didn't try to figure this thing out. They didn't sit there and say, now hold on a minute. He told us to go and preach the gospel to the whole world. It doesn't make any sense for us to go and wait in Jerusalem. We got a lot of work to do. They didn't do that. Instead, they just obeyed the Lord. They just depended upon Jesus. And they did what He said. And so if we all individually determine to have that kind of an attitude, listen, it's not up to me. It's not up to me to determine how important this thing is. No, I'm going to look to the Word of God and let Jesus tell me how important this thing is. It's not up to me to determine what kind of an approach I'm supposed to take to raising my children. I don't have to go and find the newest and the latest and the greatest in the self-help section about how to be a good parent. No, instead, I'm just going to trust the Lord. Get into the book and see what He says. You see, that's what I'm saying about an attitude that's dependent upon the Lord. If we all individually have this kind of a heart attitude, then this thing right here will be unified. And the Lord will be able to use it to make something beautiful happen. Does that make sense? Think about how much more effective you are when your body is all working as it ought to. Better yet, think of how ineffective you become when your body isn't functioning properly. When you're sick and your mind says, get out of bed, and your body says, I don't think so. You ever had the most annoying thing in the world is when your legs fall asleep. You ever had them fall completely asleep? Completely. My wife had never had that happen. She had it happen 2 weeks ago. She's not here, so I can tell you this. And she fell over. She had totally, because you can't do anything. You use your toes. You realize real quick how important those toes are because they're very important to being able to balance. And so now what you do without even thinking You know, I walk around and stand without even thinking. All of a sudden it becomes an impossibility. Why? Because no matter what my mind is trying to say, my feet aren't listening. They're asleep. You become ineffective real quick. Your whole body is hindered because your feet won't listen. Which just sounds funny. In any one of those scenarios, you become ineffective as a whole. Christ's body works the same way. When members are in submission to the head, everything works as it ought, and Jesus is able to accomplish what he desires. When the members of the body have out of sorts with the head, then the body as a whole will decrease in its effectiveness.